Before he became the most talked about name in America, before he was hated by some, idolized by others, Donald Trump was just a boy with a dream, living in the shadow of a powerful empire. But what most people don't know is how hard he fought to prove he was more than just Fred's son. If you want to hear true stories of resilience, success, and the minds that shape the world we live in, hit that subscribe button. Join us on this journey of growth and greatness. New York City, 1950. A bitter winter draped the boroughs of Queens in a thick layer of frost. The world outside stood still, quiet, frozen in time. But inside a red brick house on the corner, a little boy with golden hair watched his father command construction crews like a general on the battlefield. That man was Frederick Trump, one of the city's most influential developers of affordable housing. At just 4 years old, Donald didn't understand real estate, but he understood one thing: power ruled everything. Fred Trump was respected, feared, efficient, but never warm. He believed in discipline, in dominance, and never showing weakness. The world doesn't forgive the weak, he'd say, without even looking Donald in the eyes. From a very young age, Donald learned that the world wasn't made for the sensitive. It was made for those who demanded presence, for those who owned the room the moment they walked in. And that's what he wanted, to own the room, at any cost. At school, he was restless, rebellious. Authority? He didn't accept it. He fought. He provoked. He led. And it didn't take long before his behavior forced his parents into a drastic decision. At 13, Donald was sent to the New York Military Academy. For most kids, it would have been punishment. For Donald, it was an awakening, a training ground for the man he was becoming. Marches, strict hierarchies, brutal discipline, constant competition. He learned to dominate, to outsmart, to win. He discovered the mechanics of power. And more importantly, he realized that being admired or feared was far more useful than being loved. It was as if he wasn't preparing to be successful. He was preparing to be unbreakable. Somewhere between the drills, the shouted orders, and the perfectly aligned uniforms, a persona began to take shape, a man obsessed with legacy, with grandeur, with building something so big the world couldn't ignore him. But that obsession came with a price. Human connections started to fade. While other teens dreamt of friendships, love, and stability, Donald dreamt of dominance, of expansion, of etching his name into history like a logo. By the time he returned home, years later, he wasn't the same boy who had left. Fred Trump saw it and gave him a challenge. You want my respect? Start from the ground up, but prove to me you think big. At just 22 years old, Donald took control of a small branch of his father's company, Elizabeth Trump and Son. But he wasn't interested in building working-class housing like his father. He wanted skyscrapers, casinos, luxury hotels with his name in gold letters. He wanted New York. Then he wanted America. That day marked the birth of a new kind of ambition, louder, hungrier, more theatrical. A mindset that wouldn't settle for what was possible. A fire that would eventually learn to turn scandals into spotlight and criticism into fuel. But no ambition comes without a cost. And what Donald didn't yet know was that the path he was about to walk would lead him to be celebrated as a genius and hated as a villain. The game of power was just beginning. Every man carries a shadow, but only those bold enough to face it can turn darkness into glory. It was 1971. A young Donald Trump stepped up to lead a modest real estate operation, still using his mother's name, Elizabeth Trump and Son. But he knew that name didn't carry weight. It didn't command a room. It didn't make people stop and listen. Donald felt something burning inside him. A wild desire not just to follow in his father's footsteps, but to swallow the entire path whole. Fred Trump was king of the outer boroughs, safe, steady, and rich from building for the middle class. But his son wanted Manhattan. He wanted the top of the world. Picture it, towering buildings casting shadows over the rush of pedestrians below. A city that never sleeps and never forgives. In that steel and concrete jungle, Donald saw something most men didn't dare dream of, the top of the pyramid. But Manhattan didn't want him. To them, he was just another flashy kid from Queens Blonde. Arrogant. Wrong zip code. Wrong name. Nobody wanted to open the doors. Until he discovered the most powerful weapon of all, attention. That changed everything. Donald realized something crucial. In a crowded world, the loudest voice wins. He began feeding stories to newspapers, calling up reporters under fake names like John Barron or John Miller, praising his own deals, hyping up projects that hadn't even broken ground yet. It was bold. It was manipulative. It was magnetic. And it worked. The first time his name appeared on the front page of the New York Times, he knew. This was the real currency. Not money. Narrative. It was 1978, and a massive opportunity emerged from the ashes. The crumbling Commodore Hotel, a decaying structure beside Grand Central Station. No one wanted it. Too risky. Too far gone. But Donald saw gold where others saw ruins. While the world saw rubble, he saw a golden metaphor. Rebuild, rename, and rise. A living symbol of his own reinvention. He secured government support, tax abatements, and financial backing. Then the magic happened. The Grand Hyatt was born. Sleek, golden, spectacular. But the real spectacle, the name. For the first time, giant letters lit up the facade. It was official. The kid from Queens had conquered Manhattan. And he didn't do it quietly. He didn't just win. He made sure everyone heard it. But success, my friend, is a powerful drug. And once you taste it, you crave more. By the 1980s, Trump had become a spectacle of his own. Skyscrapers, casinos, golf courses, TV appearances, magazine covers. He wasn't just building buildings anymore. He was building a brand, a persona, an empire made of perception. Trump Plaza, Trump Tower, Trump Castle. Everything screamed power, wealth, dominance. But behind the flashing cameras and red carpets, something darker was brewing. The brighter the spotlight burned, the darker it grew inside. It was as if Donald's soul had been mortgaged to the headlines. Fred Trump watched in silence. Proud? Maybe. Worried? Definitely. Because he knew what most forget the higher you rise, the harder the fall. The weight was beginning to show. Debt piled up. The stakes too high. The bets too bold. Casinos, towers, magazines. Each one a gamble. And he wouldn't slow down. Because to stop would be to admit that maybe, just maybe, he was building a castle made of sand. The city adored him. The media chased him. His rivals feared him. But the universe, it was getting ready to collect its due. And somewhere in the quiet echo of golden hallways, a storm was gathering. The problem with rising too fast is that the ground disappears beneath your feet. And when it hits harder than you can imagine. The clock struck the dawn of the 1990s. And while the world still saw Donald Trump as the ultimate symbol of American excess inside, the foundation was cracking. He couldn't sleep. The phone rang nonstop. Not with new opportunities, but with calls from banks, creditors, and lawsuits. Heavy, relentless, invisible pressures caving in his chest. And for the first time, he felt something unfamiliar, fear. Debt had exploded. Over $3 billion in liabilities. Banks began to pull back. His stocks plummeted. And one by one his casinos began to collapse. When a man builds his empire on perception, he must be prepared to bleed in public when it collapses, the empire he had built. With headlines, gold, and bravado, Donald wasn't just losing money. He was losing the one thing he couldn't live without control of his own narrative. And for a man like Trump, that was a kind of death the tabloids that once adored him. Now they tore him apart. The Trump empire in ruins screamed the daily news. From the penthouse to the gutter, wrote Time magazine. And then came the divorce. Ivana. Legal battles. Messy accusations. Infidelity. Greed. The gossip columns became weapons sharp and merciless, cutting exactly where it hurt. He's all FOD. He was always just noise. He's done, and there in the eye of the storm a striking image. Donald Trump. Alone. Standing on an empty floor of Trump Tower. Staring at his own reflection in a giant window. Below him, the city pulsed. Above him, the weight of everything he had built. And inside him, a silence louder than any crowd he'd ever commanded. Maybe he never built for the world. Maybe everything he created was just a distraction from a hole inside him that kept getting deeper. One source, close to him, once whispered, for a brief moment. He considered seeing a therapist, but all it took was one look in the mirror to remind himself of the rule he had carved into his bones. Never show weakness. Ever. So he made a decision. He would survive the wreckage. In silence. No headlines. No pity. Just grit. Then came the turning point. A make or break moment. Surrounded by bankers, lawyers, and creditors. Billions in debt. Every deal falling apart. Every exit closed. But then, Trump did what only he could. He looked them all in the eye and said just one thing. If I go down, you go down with me. It was ruthless. It was calculated. And it worked. They blinked. They backed off. They restructured. He didn't just walk out alive. He walked out owning the room. That day, he proved he wasn't just a showman. He was a player. Cold. Strategic. And above all, resilient. But that resilience, it came at a cost. Loneliness. Sometimes, the darkness is not the end. It's just the place where legends are reborn. One by one, his allies disappeared. Investors pulled out. Contracts vanished. And the name Trump, once a golden symbol of success, became something else entirely, a punchline, a warning, a brand dripping in failure. The glamour faded. The spotlight dimmed. But even in the shadows, he didn't disappear. He walked the halls of Trump Tower like a soldier surveying a battlefield after the war. Every corner, every marble column, every window pane reflecting not what he was, but what he could become. And to himself he whispered, they think it's over, but I will come back. I always do. And in those quiet, forgotten years, he began to write. The Art of the Comeback, a book most dismissed, some never even read. But hidden inside its pages was something more, the seed, the strategy, the blueprint. Because this time, Trump wasn't just aiming to rebuild a business. He wanted to become a myth. But to do that, he'd have to attempt something no mogul ever dared. Step away from deals and step into the hearts of the people. It was just a flicker of an idea, a subtle shift, barely visible. But it was there, and one day it would change the course of history. Donald Trump. As a political figure, the stage had already been built. The character, already in costume. All that was missing was the right audience, and the perfect moment to set it all on fire. Back in the 90s, everyone thought Trump had fallen. What they didn't realize was that he was falling to gain momentum, because his next chapter wouldn't just be a comeback. It would be an ambush. A direct strike at the center of power, at the cameras, at the system, at history itself. They called him Don, a relic, a bankrupt symbol of arrogance and excess. But Trump knew something they didn't. Failure wasn't the end. It was the pause before reinvention. A rare moment to rewrite the script. And while the world saw a man fading, Trump saw the opening of a new door. He didn't want to be just a name etched on glass above a building. He wanted to be in every American home, every living room, every conversation, visible, unforgettable, undeniable. That's when The Apprentice was born. He was no longer the golden boy of the 80s, no longer the tabloid king, but he still had something no one could steal, presence. He could walk into a room and own it. He could bend a story to his will. He could make people watch even when they hated what they were seeing. And in front of a camera, that skill became power. When The Apprentice premiered in 2004, America watched him from their couches. Black leather chair, red tie, eyes of steel, and one phrase that burned into pop culture, "You're fired." It was simple. It was brutal. It was addictive. The public couldn't look away. In an era when television shaped public consciousness, Trump wasn't just reborn, he was rebranded. Not as a businessman, but as an archetype. The boss, the titan, the face of success itself. But behind the polished editing and dramatic boardrooms, there was a deeper plan. Every sentence, every raised eyebrow, every pause was choreographed. Because this wasn't just about business anymore. It was about transformation. He wasn't rebuilding a company. He was embedding himself into the American psyche as an idea, as ambition incarnate, as a symbol of reinvention. First, they watched him. Then they followed him. And without realizing it, they became part of his next move, week after week. Millions tuned in. Not to laugh at him anymore, but to learn from him. Somewhere along the way, the narrative flipped. The bankrupt mogul was now the man in control. The guy from TV, the boss, a blueprint for success. Young entrepreneurs quoted him. Celebrities asked for his advice. College students mimicked his style. The name Trump was no longer passed around boardrooms. It was being whispered in living rooms, in diners, in bars, in middle America. And that was exactly what he wanted. But something deeper was happening. Something Trump hadn't felt in decades. Not since his first skyscraper kissed the clouds. Approval, applause, adoration. It was a new kind of high, stronger than any contract, sweeter than any negotiation. Because this time, the payoff wasn't financial, it was psychological. He was being accepted, validated, worshipped. And with every cheer, Every headline, every, "Did you see what Trump said last night?" He began to realize the real game wasn't business. It was influence, culture, power, politics. From behind the curtain, he watched. Carefully. America was splitting at the seams. The elite spoke in riddles. The media dictated values that no longer made sense. And the average citizen? They felt invisible. Abandoned. Unheard. Trump saw a vacuum. A silence waiting to be shattered. A space for someone. Raw. Flawed. Unfiltered. Someone who said out loud what millions only dared to whisper. So he leaned in. Talk shows. Debates. Radio appearances. Everywhere he went, he brought controversy. But more importantly, he brought attention. He was polarizing. He was unpredictable. He was a walking headline. And he loved it. What others saw as chaos, he saw as calibration. Each outburst was a test. Each viral moment was data. He was learning, adapting, adjusting. And beneath the bronze skin and the flashy persona was a strategist, a collector of betrayals, an archivist of slights, a master of memory. He remembered everything, every article, every insult, every room that doubted him. And in the shadows, he began to build something. Not a tower, not a casino, but a movement. He assembled a new kind of team, not real estate agents or bankers, but cultural tacticians, media whisperers, narrative engineers, people who understood one thing. America wasn't just ready for change, it was starving for authenticity, even if that authenticity came wrapped in chaos. And who better to deliver it than someone who didn't pretend to be perfect? He wasn't polished. He wasn't diplomatic. He wasn't traditional. But he was real. And real was what people craved. While others followed scripts, he followed instincts. While others tried to be liked, he tried to be unforgettable. Where others apologized, he doubled down. He became a mirror of the anger, a vessel for frustration, a megaphone for the unheard. And then came the final tool, social media. Trump didn't use it like a businessman. He wielded it like a weapon. Every tweet was a grenade, every post a spark, every rant a test of the system. And it worked. The algorithms loved conflict. The people couldn't look away. And for the first time in modern history, a businessman didn't need the media. Because he had become the media, it was no longer about rebuilding a name. It was about rewriting the rules. While the world watched the spectacle, his hotels began to fill again. His businesses recovered. His empire was back in motion. But that wasn't the real story. Not anymore. This wasn't about money. It was about territory, cultural territory, psychological dominance, presence. Trump was no longer just a real estate mogul. He was becoming a movement. And few realized it in time, because what looked like improvisation was anything but. It was strategy. It was planning. It was years of listening, watching, studying. He knew the American people. He knew their fears, their fatigue, their broken dreams. He knew the silent despair of middle America, the men who lost their jobs, the women who felt invisible, the families who watched the American dream slip through their fingers like sand. So he made a decision. He would become the dream, repackaged, rebranded, louder than ever. He wasn't selling real estate anymore. He was selling hope, raw, unfiltered, wrapped in gold and rage. He understood something no traditional politician did, that politics, in its essence, wasn't about policies. It was about emotion. It was about belonging, about telling a story people could see themselves in. And that was when the script flipped. Because Trump didn't just want to fix his image. He wanted to fix the system. He didn't just want to be a business icon. He wanted to be president. But the world had no idea what was coming. June 2015. Trump Tower. A golden escalator. And a moment that would echo across history. As he descended with Melania at his side, the media rolled their eyes. Late-night hosts sharpened their jokes. Pundits whispered, "This is just a stunt." But they missed something. There was a tone in his voice, a sharpness, a raw edge. He wasn't asking for permission. He was stepping into the arena fists up, eyes forward, unapologetic. He talked about immigration, about safety, about trade deals and walls. And he did it without filters, without rehearsals, without the polished gloss of politics. He spoke like the guy sitting at the bar, tired of being ignored, sick of watching his country fall apart. And people listened. They shared. They cheered. The experts laughed. They said he'd be gone in weeks. No experience. No political allies. No structure. But they didn't understand Trump wasn't playing their game. He was creating a new one. While others spent millions on polished ads, he tweeted. He provoked. He hijacked the airwaves without spending a dime. Every outburst became a headline. Every insult was replayed for days. And whether you loved him or hated him, you couldn't look away. He didn't chase attention. He commanded it. The media tried to control the narrative. He rewrote it in real time. He used them against themselves. Outrage became exposure. Criticism became fuel. Every attack made him stronger. The other candidates tried to look presidential. He looked uncontainable. And to millions of Americans that felt like freedom. Because beneath the scandals, beneath the tweets, beneath the chaos, there was something most of them missed: identification. Ordinary people, forgotten by politics, ignored by the elite, finally saw someone who sounded like them. He said what they weren't allowed to say. He mocked the media. He bulldozed the insiders. He didn't care about approval. He wasn't the hero. He was the outsider, the anti-hero, the wrecking ball. And America, divided and disillusioned, was ready for exactly that. The more they tried to destroy him, the more unstoppable he became. Every scandal, every headline, every attempt to cancel him only fed the fire. To his base, he wasn't a villain. He was a martyr of truth, a living symbol of resistance against the elite, against the establishment, against the politically correct system that had ignored millions for decades. On the debate stage, he broke every rule. He interrupted. He mocked. He attacked without restraint. He wasn't there to persuade. He was there to dominate. And one by one, he crushed all 16 Republican contenders, seasoned politicians, governors, senators. What had seemed absurd just months before became a brutal, undeniable reality. But the real battle was just beginning. Hillary Clinton, former First Lady, former Senator, former Secretary of State, backed by the full weight of the political establishment. The polls said it was over. The headlines spoke with certainty. The experts laughed. Hollywood stood against him. Silicon Valley stood against him. Wall Street, academia, legacy media all lined up for her. Trump wasn't just outgunned. He was outnumbered, outfunded, outpredicted. But he knew something they didn't. He was tuned into a different frequency. While the echo chambers of Washington echoed each other's confidence, Trump hit the road. He visited the heartland, the empty factories, the dying towns, the farms long forgotten by national debates. He listened to the unheard. He spoke their language. And he made them one promise: make America great again. It was more than a slogan. It was a rallying cry, a call for redemption, a return to dignity. He wasn't offering policies. He was offering belonging. And something deep inside millions of Americans lit up. This wasn't politics. This was personal. The campaign became a war zone. Leaks, smears, daily media attacks, old footage, new scandals. Every week, a new reason to quit. Every day, a new headline screaming it's over. But Trump didn't flinch. He didn't apologize. He didn't retreat. He absorbed the blows and turned them into thunder. The more chaotic it got, the more powerful he seemed. To many, he began to look invincible. And the media still didn't get it. They treated his rise like a glitch in the system. But Trump was reprogramming the system. He was proving something powerful, that in a world drowning in filters and polish, rawness was a superpower. He wasn't flawless. He was real, flawed, loud, unpredictable. And to a country exhausted by robotic leaders, that imperfection was a breath of air. Then came Election Day, and with it the absolute confidence of the elite that Trump was about to be humiliated. Newsrooms were prepared to write his obituary. Pollsters gave him a 10% chance at best. But then vote by vote, state by state, something unbelievable happened. The map turned red. Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. The unthinkable became undeniable. America stood still. He won because of them. Because those flaws made him human to a nation sick of manufactured perfection. He wasn't polished. He was raw. And in 2016, Raw won. Reaching the top was unlikely. But staying there under the weight of global scrutiny would be the ultimate test. The presidency wasn't a prize. It was a battleground. And from the very first day, Donald Trump made one thing clear. He wouldn't follow anyone's script. Expectations were rock bottom. Criticism was nonstop. But Trump didn't enter the White House to play it safe. He came to leave a mark that couldn't be erased. Within days, he shocked the world. The travel ban targeting several Muslim-majority countries sparked outrage and protests across airports and cities. To his supporters, it was a bold move to protect national security. To his critics, it was a betrayal of American values, a stain on the nation's image. And yet, Trump didn't flinch. He governed the same way he campaigned. Raw, aggressive, unfiltered. Twitter became his weapon. No layers of advisors. No polished press releases. Just him speaking directly to the world, 160 characters at a time. Every tweet was a spark. Some ignited firestorms. Some shook markets. Some rattled foreign leaders. But all of them kept the world watching. His economic policy, protectionist and unapologetic. He slashed taxes, rolled back regulations, and tore up trade deals he deemed unfair like NAFTA, replacing it with the USMCA. He made it clear he wasn't governing for the global economy. He was governing for Detroit, for Ohio, for the Rust Belt. And in some of those forgotten regions, factories reopened. Confidence returned. For the first time in years, some Americans felt seen. But the chaos never stopped. The war with the press escalated. Daily, relentless. He labeled them fake news, mocked journalists, dismissed facts that didn't fit his narrative. It wasn't just politics. It was a culture war. And suddenly, America found itself divided not just by party, but by reality itself. His supporters saw a warrior fighting a corrupt media machine. His critics saw a threat to the very foundation of democracy. On the world stage, he shattered the post-war order. He criticized NATO, withdrew from the Paris Climate Accord, clashed with allies, and extended olive branches to authoritarians from Putin to Kim Jong-un. It was a radical shift, and the world wasn't sure what to make of it. To many, it was reckless. To others, it was long overdue. America first, that was the mission. That was the lens. Every treaty, every handshake, every move filtered through one question: is this good for America? At home, he began shaping the future quietly, strategically. He appointed conservative judges to federal courts at an unprecedented pace. And most importantly, he reshaped the Supreme Court. Those choices, those lifetime appointments, would echo through generations. Abortion, civil rights, environmental policy. Everything was now on the table. And for both sides of the political divide, the stakes had never felt higher. But Trump's story was far from over. Even as his presidency faced its darkest storms, he stood firm and yielding. He survived 2 impeachments. The first, in 2019, accused of abusing power in a scandal involving Ukraine. The second, after the shocking events of January 6, 2021, accused of inciting an insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. Both times, he was acquitted. But those battles left deep scars in the fragile fabric of American democracy. Throughout his 4 years in power, Trump proved to be a master of mobilization. Millions saw in him a leader who spoke for them, someone fearless enough to challenge the system. In an era defined by extreme polarization, he became the symbol of modern conservatism and a fierce rebellion against the establishment. Yet, that polarization came at a heavy cost. The nation fractured like never before. Mass protests, political violence, a crisis of trust in institutions. The most dramatic moment came near the end of his tenure, when a mob of his supporters stormed the Capitol on January 6, 2021, trying to stop the certification of Joe Biden's victory. The world watched in disbelief. The iconic image of the Capitol, seized by protesters, became a stark symbol of democracy's fragility in America. Trump denied inciting the violence, but the damage was done. Despite the chaos and controversy, Trump left a legacy that will shape American politics for decades. His style of leadership, populist, social media-driven, direct communication, transformed forever how leaders connect with the public. For many, he was the president who finally told the truth, stood up to powerful enemies, and restored pride to millions. For others, he was a dangerous figure who weakened democracy, sowed division, and left wounds too deep to heal quickly. But one thing is undeniable: Donald Trump kept his promise. He was different. He shattered the status quo. He left a mark time cannot erase. Now, as America struggles to heal, questions remain. What comes after Trump? Who can unite a divided nation? And most importantly, how can this polarization become a foundation for hope and rebuilding? Those answers remain uncertain. But this is clear: Donald Trump changed America forever, and the world will never be the same. Leaving the White House was just the beginning of a new battle. No longer a commander-in-chief, Trump now fought to maintain power in a different arena, one of influence, legacy, and survival. For a man who built his life around control, dominance, and image, losing the presidency was an unprecedented challenge. But surrender was not an option. His exit sparked relentless investigations, legal battles, media firestorms, and fierce public rejection from some. Yet Trump met every blow with the same weapons that took him to the top: aggression, omnipresence, and an unyielding narrative. Trump didn't disappear after leaving the White House. He doubled down using social media to rally his base, launching new platforms, making public appearances, and giving explosive interviews. He made it clear he was coming back to be the central figure in American politics. His influence transcended the office. He became the symbol of a movement that goes beyond traditional politics. But this fight also exposed the system's fragilities. Facing financial investigations, accusations of misconduct, and an even more polarized political climate, the reality became clear. Staying in power requires more than charisma and popular support. It demands institutional resilience, strategic alliances, and the ability to adapt. For his supporters, Trump became the embodiment of perseverance and resilience. He showed that even in the face of massive adversity, you don't give up on your goals. Regardless of opinions about his actions, it's impossible to deny the force with which he fought to stay relevant. But this struggle carries universal lessons for anyone who wants to win in life. The battle to stay on top is just as intense as the battle to get there. You must be ready to face storms, criticism, and loss, but never lose sight of what you want to achieve. Trump knows the game has changed. Politics, communication, influence all are in constant flux. To remain in the spotlight, you must reinvent yourself, adapt, and persist with emotional intelligence. His post-presidential journey invites us to reflect on what success and legacy truly mean. Because in the end, winning the world is not enough. You have to know what to do with it afterwards. What we learn from Trump is this: a winning mindset doesn't disappear when the spotlight fades. It lives in the courage to continue, the boldness to face new challenges, and the determination to write your own story, even when the odds are against you. For anyone listening to this story now, perhaps the greatest lesson is this: the path to success never ends. Every victory is a step, not the final destination. And every fall, no matter how hard, can be the foundation for a new beginning. Donald Trump's journey is full of highs and lows, wins and losses, applause and criticism. But above all, it's the story of someone who refused to settle, who never accepted limits imposed by others, and who always fought to claim his place at the top. That determination inspires millions to believe that even when everything seems lost, there's still a chance to turn the game around. There's still room for those who dare to dream big, act boldly, and persist without fear. And that is the very essence of the success mindset we want to share on this channel. Because in the end, what truly makes the difference is not the circumstances, but the mindset with which we face every battle. From the moment Donald Trump left the Oval Office, he understood a fundamental truth for any leader: the power of influence does not end with a title. It is built and nurtured every single day. For Trump, his base was more than just followers. It was a true community, a force capable of withstanding political storms, media attacks, and personal crises. Trump's connection with his supporters has been and still is one of the strongest pillars of his journey. Millions of Americans see in him someone who speaks their language, who represents their values and daily struggles. This deep bond went beyond traditional politics, becoming a social phenomenon. So, what can we learn from this? First, authenticity matters. Trump doesn't try to be someone else. He shows himself exactly as he is, with all his flaws and certainties. This raw honesty, though controversial, creates genuine identification. In a world saturated with politically correct speeches, the unfiltered truth can be a powerful difference maker. Second, charisma and direct communication are crucial weapons to keep attention and support. Trump speaks with passion, uses simple, repetitive words, creates slogans that stick in your mind, and leverages social media to stay present in people's everyday lives. This strategy built a sense of belonging and mobilization that no other politician has matched in recent years. Another essential lesson is perseverance in the face of criticism. Being constantly targeted by media and opponents did not shake his confidence. On the contrary, he used those moments to reinforce his image as an outsider, someone who challenges the system, fighting powerful forces to protect his supporters. Leadership, then, is not just about governing, but about inspiring, influencing, and maintaining a deep emotional connection. Trump understood this like few others, and that is a valuable lesson for anyone looking to grow and lead, whether in business, projects, or life itself. Finally, the influence Trump wields comes with a warning. Power must not serve only personal gain, it must build something greater. The responsibility that comes with recognition is immense, and how we choose to use our influence determines the legacy we leave behind. Trump will remain a polarizing figure, but his ability to create and sustain a solid base is undeniable. His story shows the impact a strong, authentic, and perseverant mindset can have, even when facing immense adversity. For you watching this channel, Trump's example serves as a constant reminder. Leadership and success demand more than talent. They demand courage, strategy, and true connection. Above all, the power to influence begins with the ability to connect deeply with those who trust you. Looking at Donald Trump's journey, it's clear his legacy goes far beyond titles held or controversies sparked. What truly remains is the story of a man who embodied an unshakable mindset, one that never accepts no for an answer, sees every obstacle as a chance to grow, and believes, above all, in the power of his own determination. Donald Trump showed us one undeniable truth for anyone chasing big goals. You need courage to be different, to swim against the current, and to face the fiercest storms without losing focus. This lesson goes far beyond politics. It applies to every area of life. The resilience Trump displayed, especially after leaving the presidency, is a clear example of where true strength lies. In the will to keep trying, even when the odds seem stacked against you. It's easy to give up in the face of criticism, failure, and defeat. But winners are those who rise again, learn from their mistakes, and turn adversity into fuel for their next victory. Another key point in this journey is the importance of building a legacy. A legacy is not what you accumulate, but what you leave behind. In ideas, changes, inspiration, or in the lives you've touched. To his supporters, Trump is a symbol of resistance and of fighting for what he believes in. To his critics, he is a warning regardless of opinions. His impact is undeniable. But what this story really teaches us is that success is never a straight line. It's a journey full of ups and downs, where every step counts, and every challenge is an opportunity to grow. A winning mindset is one that never loses sight of its purpose, even when the road gets tough and doubts creep in. If you're looking for inspiration, Trump's example invites you to reflect on how you face your own challenges. Are you ready to keep going, to fight for what you believe in, to reinvent yourself, and to use every fall as a springboard to something greater? The success mindset is exactly that, the ability to stay firm, focused, and passionate about what you want to achieve. It's understanding that the path is long, the journey demands sacrifices, but the reward is worth every effort. Here on this channel, we want you to carry this message with you, to be inspired not only by victories, but mostly by the strength to overcome defeats. To understand that true transformation starts inside your mind with the decision to never give up. Donald Trump reminds us that a success story is built every day with courage, vision, and above all, the right mindset. That is the essence of the mindset we want you to have. Now, the question is, what will you do with this inspiration? Will you let difficulties stop you, or will you use every obstacle to become stronger and closer to your goal? The path is open. The choice is yours. And success, as Trump has shown, belongs to those who don't stop until they get there. If this story moved you, if it sparked that fire in your chest to never give up, I invite you to subscribe to this channel. Together, we'll build a community of people who believe in the power of transformation and the success mindset. Drop a comment below sharing what inspired you the most in this video. Your voice matters, and it might be the push someone needs to hear today.